I can sit here right now and I'm going to say this very simply. I continue right now with my gray hairs, believe that hard work is one of the equations of success. I'm aware that I use the word hard work now instead of hustle because the word hustle has been demonized and positioned in a way that was never intended. My first book that I wrote, right there, the green one, Crush It. It's called Crush It. But in that book, verbatim, it says, if you are unhappy, then you should consider putting in extra hours to change the course of your life. But in that book that I wrote in 2008, it says, if you work 9 to 6 and you make $63,000 a year and you are very happy, then you've won life.
Yeah, exactly.
What has evolved is I am a byproduct of my thesis. I create creative that is contextual to the time. When I first hit the scene, will resonate. When I first hit the scene, we were in 2008, 9, and 10, and people didn't have jobs.
Yeah.
And I knew that the internet was going to win and that you could be an influencer and a creator and make money. So my point back then was, hey, you've got to use 6 p.m. to midnight if you are miserable, if you're suicidal, if you're living your life for the end of you're dead. You're working too much. So work harder in the short term to get you off the poison.
Right.
It's a job that's paying for your mortgage or your debt. That was the version that people, as a matter of fact, this is actually fascinating. The human that wrote the Medium article that said I was the poster child of hustle porn literally wrote me an apology message years ago saying I used you for my own advancement. Actually, you know what actually happened? You might find this interesting. I, on a podcast, went into deep double click on how I got positioned that way by some. A lot of people watching right now that are being like, I don't even know this. There was a period, to your point, where people thought I was the poster child of hustle porn. It was because there was a Medium article written that I was the poster child of hustle porn. In that article, he wrote 30 things that were not true. And it was devastating to me because if you look at my content from 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10,
it would not reflect that.
I didn't speak about kindness and patience is a reaction to where we are now. People are lacking kindness and lacking patience. Yeah. In 2008, there was more civility and there was less jealousy and envy. Yep. What there wasn't was people didn't have opportunities and there was a gold mine called the internet, so I was loud. Today, I speak about civility and patience because every 25-year-old wants to be a millionaire and famous, and people are nasty to each other for no reason.
Yeah.
So I will always be a vessel of what do I think the right
see in the culture around you. Absolutely. Yeah.
But like why I brought up Matt will tell you the way in the humanity that I treated people, who I was, like I've worked hard every minute. I work harder, by the way, today than I did back then.
Ever. Yeah.
So it's not an evolution of my wisdom of like, oh, wait a minute, I've never worked hard for the money or for the outside validation or for the vanity. I work hard because I adore what I do for a living and I produce a lot of content hoping I can motivate or unlock or inspire or debate on how one can get there, because I will tell you, there is nothing more true to what I'm about to say. It is, I'll even say it this way, it is unfortunate, even in the most progressive societies like France and the Scandinavian countries, it is shocking, that's a better word, because it's not unfortunate, it is shocking how much of a percentage of a human's life is at work. The amount of work that we work, for me, it's great because it's my great joy and my hobby. But in the scheme of things, if you take away sleeping and you realize how many hours you actually have in your life and what percentage goes to work, it's shocking. My argument is, if that's the case, please do something you like.
Something you love, something you care about.
At least palpable. It's got to be at least neutral. When it bleeds into toxic and negative and awful, I don't care how much you're going to not like driving a regular car instead of a fancy car. Or I don't care that you have to move out of a nicer neighborhood to a crappier neighborhood. I don't care if you have to sell your home and start renting.
Get happy. You
have to get happy.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
That's right. You know, it's funny. It's making me reflect. So as the lexicon changes and words get weaponized, I have always described myself as a hustler. And I'm proud of that and fine with that. And I work hard on things that I give a shit about, right?
I love
And
that.
I think it's worth it for me to wake up early and work at night on something that I feel society needs, people need. Now, I also sleep 8 hours a night. I have a huge, robust social and family life. I hike 3 times a week. So being a hustler to me does not mean that I am
That's because you and I grew up in an era.
driving myself or my family, right? And so the weaponization of language.
That is all that happened with this.
Yeah.
Literally, the reason you and I view hustler as good is because of another sports thing. Pete Rose, Charlie Hustle, was world famous before he got caught up in betting, gambling issues. And he was someone, especially for boys, for boys 45 to, or baseball fans, it's not even just boys. If you're 45 to 55, the word hustle was such an admirable, good word.
It meant you were diligent and motivated and on it.
And so to your point, to me, hustle translates to work ethic and grit and tenacity and enjoyment. I continue to think it's a great word.
I do too.
Have I changed it to hard work to make a point so I don't lose some of the people who've demonized the word? Sure, but it doesn't take away the essence. I do not think that please do not say that you're going to be a billionaire, but then work 20 hours a day, a week, excuse me. Like, let's make this logical. Let's all understand it. But
effort and results out. Yeah, absolutely.
I was so cynical as an entrepreneur and someone who invested in startups that this is going to make some people smile or go, There was such an era when I was doing angel investing in Silicon Valley that, especially after Mark Zuckerberg hit big, the Harvard thing, that every kid that was at Harvard and Stanford, you basically by default thought they were capable when 99% weren't.
Yeah.
I actually recognized that and went the other way. I missed out
on some real talent,
on some real investments because I demonized if you went to Penn.
I know what you mean.
I overcorrected too far the other way, and I had wished, in hindsight, that I could have just seen the pitch deck because the second Shear he walked in and said, I was out.
Yeah, right. I
didn't think they had the gusto, and I was the reverse. They came from wealthy parents, so they don't have the grit, and I made mistakes. And so the concept is profound.
Yeah, it really, well, I've changed. I mean, I was with Boston Consulting Group. We did all our recruiting at Harvard and MIT and Stanford, and I finally reached, 10 years into my career. I'm like, well, sure. Are there some quality, amazing people at those institutions? Of course. But also at University of Oklahoma, SDSU, and people who never went to college. And by the way, they have a criminal record.
It's just like anybody who's a human being knows it to be true.
But we don't operate that way always.
At scale, it's funny. Yeah. I'm sorry to bring this up again, but I just love the National Football League, even though I'm a little depressed. My Jets lost on Monday night. There was a long time. Let me use somebody I hate, Josh Allen, because he's the Buffalo Bills quarterback. He went to a very tiny school, and 25, 30 years earlier, 40 years earlier, he's going to have a very hard time getting drafted because he was from a small school. But then they started really focusing on the NFL Combine, the data. And they could see his strength and his speed. And yes, he didn't play the hardest competition, but they could run the math, the tangible things. And emotion was being left at the door. No longer was it that. And so, I think that is something that the business world should pick up on more. I think more businesses should be all in the way y'all do it, because I do think recruiting and HR and bosses and managers and CEOs, me included, we're human beings and we are affected by some of those data points, which will throw us off from the mission. I have zero expectation of the people around me working as hard as me. Zero. Because they're not being compensated at the same level. I think this is a huge mistake, and it's an audacious and delusional mistake that people around you should be working as hard as you when they are not being compensated as much as you are. I deal with it very easily. I have employees that are 9-to-5ers, my friend, really. And it doesn't bother me. I don't get to judge my employees' ambitions. I just have to do a good job articulating the truth of what comes along with their ambitions. So if you're a 9-to-5er and you're off the grid all weekend and after 5, it's unlikely you're gonna be the CEO one day when I move on. But it doesn't mean you can't have a great career at my company. And so I need all types. I need the people that wanna work. And by the way, I'm also very prepared when their vibe changes. I've had many employees sit in my room at 25 and tell me, Gary, one day I'm gonna run this company. And then they fall in love and start a family and move out to the suburbs and wanna go to every softball game. And I think that's beautiful. And then all of a sudden title and comp start to slow down for that person and somebody might lap them, and that's okay too. Like, I don't judge how people wanna live their life. I'm just responsible for being articulate, candorous, respectful, kind. And so I'll be honest with you, I've never struggled with the level of work ethic or tenacity or even capability of the people around me. If I think someone stinks and are lazy, I'm in control, I can fire them. Just remember, if you have employees, you're in charge. You know, like, I'm stunned by how many CEOs or founders are crying about things all the time. They're like, Johnny's a mess. I'm like, fire Johnny. You can. You know, and so just a lot of excuses and a lot of lack of accountability. And like, by the way, if you're firing Johnny as your right hand and he's the 6th right hand you fired in 2 years, now it's time to not point fingers, it's time to point thumbs. Because clearly you're the problem. So there's self-awareness, there's so much that goes into building this out properly.
Yeah, I like that. Which Michael Hyatt would always tell me about stuff like that. What about your leadership has led to this result? Right, you're the common denominator.
I couldn't explain to you how much I believe the next sentence out of my mouth. I genuinely believe that every single thing in my companies that's a problem is 100% my fault. I'm aware that I didn't forget to close the door. Like, you know, like, but like, I think that level of accountability when you're at the top actually leads to a lot less anxiety and a lot more happiness. And I also think it's true. I hired the person that left the door open, or I hired the person that hired the person that left the door open. And so I think that's something that is liberating, and I think is unfortunately a little rare.
And how do you figure out where to focus your attention?
I juggle it through good people. You know, so I think one thing I've done very well is I built a very large organization with VaynerX. So VaynerX holds VaynerMedia and 8 other companies, the Sasha Group, even No Saddam, Vayner Commerce, and Gallery Media Group, PureWow.com, and things of that nature, Vayner Speakers. And then even outside of that, Vayner Sports sits outside of VaynerX. My brother runs that. And then there's obviously VFriends that sits outside of it. And now I have VaynerWatt, which is a TV production company, sits outside of it. VaynerWatt, my partner Eric Wattenberg, runs that day to day. I'm the special sauce. Vayner Sports, my brother AJ runs that. I'm the special sauce. VaynerX, I run. VFriends, I run. But VaynerX, I run with Mark Yutkin and Alan Harker and Avery and Nick and Kaylin and Hannah. And, you know, and VFriends, I run with John Troutman and Andy Kraniak and Miling Chow. Like, so, you know, I think I scale through people, which works for me because I'm very much a guidance counselor, a camp counselor, a head coach, you know, a big brother. I'm very comfortable and I enjoy leading people and building really deep relationships within my business organizations. And that continuity, even Wine Library, I still run, I mean, literally while we were listening to that nice music, I'm gonna pull it up right here on my laptop. I texted my best friend Brandon something about today's wine text. By the way, if you like wine, winetext.com, sign up for it. I texted him something about it. And he's running the wine store day to day. somebody I've known since I was 14, but I'm still very involved. Because it's my family business, it's kind of my first love. And so, I think I do it by having great people around me. And then how do I focus? Anybody who's watching this who has 3 or more children is gonna know what I'm gonna say. You're only as happy as your most unhappy child. Same with me running 10, 15, 20 businesses. I'm just kind of watching them, and wherever I need to help is where I'm at. Whether that's extreme offense or extreme defense, right? So the way I view it is extreme offense, extreme defense. Either, oh my God, we've cracked something, let's go all in, and that's gonna eat up a lot of energy, or we're in trouble, let me go all in. So think of it as a boat. There's a hole in the boat, I gotta go put my finger in it. Or a boat race. I see a path where we can beat every other boat. I'm gonna go jump and take the wheel and put my foot on the pedal, and that's how I run my world. I would argue I'm not only the CEO, I'm even the COO in a lot of my companies. But that is not because I'm trying to maximize money. I'm trying to maximize happiness. For me, running businesses day to day is my great joy. I would rather run my businesses than go skiing or play golf or go scaling, right? So Dan's advice is for a lot of entrepreneurs who actually have businesses predominantly to make money, to then go spend it on things they enjoy more. A yacht, trips, whatever that may be, fancy cars. I think I'm in a smaller group of people where, I've got VaynerX, for context of this audience, is 2,500 people in a $330 million revenue business. So it's a big business, just that one. But I get enjoyment out of being the COO in a world where I understand what Dan's saying. Like, a lot of people are like, become the chairman of the board, Gary, go do bigger things, make more money. I'm like, yes, I understand. And that's very good advice. It's not bad advice. But they don't understand me. I enjoy the HR, the challenges of restructures. I've got a lot of COO DNA in me. I've got much more COO DNA in me than chairman of the board DNA. Right, I'm the CEO, but I go down to be COO way more than I get excited about one day being chairman. In fact, I hope I'm never the chairman only of my companies. I hope that the day I take my hand off the wheel is the day I die.
Play the hand you're dealt and stop making excuses.
When people hear that, I don't want them to hear that like, hey, who cares that you had an abusive father? Stop complaining. Like, that's hard. If you had an alcoholic father who hit you, that's impossibly challenging. I'm not saying, who cares, move on with your life, you loser. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there are many people in the world who did the exercise, the therapy, the reading, the positivity in their ears, who were able to overcome adversity to live a productive life. I'm saying that if anybody in the world has ever achieved happiness and success under your circumstances, then you are capable of it. My mother lost her mother at 5.
Wow.
How much more adversity do you want? And she went on to become the greatest mother of all time. So I think it's incredibly important. There's not a person listening, not a person right now behind the scenes, or me and you, that didn't have plenty of adversity in different ways. We all have our own adversities. I'll give you an example. I now believe one of the most adverse situations to be born into is extreme wealth. Something I would have never thought of 30 years ago. That if you told me, hey, Gary, give me a scenario where you immediately are gonna worry for that person's life, I would say growing up, being born to a billionaire family that's 3rd generation wealthy. That level of potential nepotism and judgment is profound. So when somebody grows up poor in a village with no water, it's very hard for them to be empathetic to a 3rd generation billionaire's kid. However, until you walk in someone else's shoes, you don't know. And I can tell you, some of the deeply, deeply most unhappy people I know on earth are the ones that were born with the most, because it's a very challenging upbringing.
Reminds me of a quote that says, the hard way is hard, but it's not as hard as the easy way.
Oh, I like that quote. I've not heard that often. I think now that you've said it, I might have heard it once or twice.
You took me there with your last story.
I love you for that. It's a great quote. It's true. Because everything in life has a price. It just does. And I think, I think it's really, I like that quote a lot.
Is suffering necessary for existence?
I think it's less about, is it necessary for existence? I wish that many of us could live life without suffering. I just think it is. If we as humans are capable of loving, which we all are, it means suffering's part of the story. I mean, suffering is just a part of the journey. So I think I wish it wasn't a necessity. It's less of like, do I believe that somebody can live a perfect life? I mean, in theory, you'd like to think yes. But I think that's a little bit of delusion. There's nobody who will live a life, especially if they're lucky and get to live a life to 80, 90, 100. Not only will you deal with suffering, you will deal with multiple variations of suffering. And so humans love. And if you love, that means suffering is part of the equation. And so, I think it's part of what we signed up for.
I mean, some of my biggest lessons in life, I grew from my first heartbreak. I grew from working under a toxic boss for 13 years.
Of course.
Before I started this. I grew from falling out with my best friend and cousin, and it made me a more resilient person.
No question. Adversity is the foundation of success.
Like that.
It just is. And so as long as one can contextualize their suffering, let's use your cousin. I don't know the story. If you choose optimism, if you sit here today as a young man and say, that was horrible, I say maybe. But maybe we can say, look at how many years did you have a very good relationship with your cousin? I'm asking you, how many years?
All my life.
Give me the number.
38 years.
I view you as very lucky. I was born to a very small family. Most of my family heritage was lost in the Holocaust. I don't even have a single cousin that's my age. So I hear that, and I look at my children and their relationships with their cousins, and I hear 38 years with a cousin as best friend. I view to choose optimism. I view you as lucky that you had 38 years of that. I'm quite back to suffering. When you have 38 years of that, when you don't have that, it hurts. And there's a lot of pain that came along with that for both of you, I'm sure.
Truly.
But I view it from my seat as an opportunity for you to view it as a remarkable gift that you had at all, right? There's that saying about losing love, but never having it at all, stuff like that. That's what you had with your cousin. You had 38 years of love, experiences, positive memories. Currently, the taste is not as good. But as you get older, my friend, only one thing will happen. The negativity will subside and the fondness of those first 38 years will grow, which is why so many people that love each other reconcile. The likelihood of you and your cousin you haven't reconciled yet. The likelihood of the two of you reconciling after 38 years of good is very high. It may take 4, 7, 12 years, and it may never happen. Sometimes people are too stubborn. Sometimes humility on both sides is lacking. But there's times where truly, if God was looking down, one person was 100% wrong. It's rare, but it happens once in a blue moon. And usually that's the reason there is no reconciliation. But anytime anyone has a problem with somebody, in that scenario, they're a contributor. Let me be very vulnerable. I have feelings towards people I resent. It was only into my mid-40s that I realized I was a contributor. My lack of candor in not telling people that I loved what was bothering me was the enabler for them to do more of it. Is that their fault, or was I a contributor to it? This has been one of the things I've been thinking a lot about. For some reason, we've weaponized the word hustle as a negative to mental health. In my world, there's no correlation. First of all, let's break down the word hustle. Instead of weaponizing the word hustle, like many people on the extreme side of delusion, I view the word hustle as the word hard work. As a matter of fact, maybe something you know and others here know is I've stopped using hustle and now I just use hard work. To me, it's always meant the same thing. So I believe in hard work. I really have no idea how you achieve anything without it. Not in the gym, not in self-esteem, not in complacency, not in mental health, and definitely not in business. So for me, hard work does not have any contribution to burnout or mental health issues. Why people burn out and have health issues is because they're not self-aware and because they're insecure. If you're working 14 hours a day, taking drugs, doing the wrong things, all to achieve $1 million to impress others, you will 100% of the time burn out. When you work 15 hours a day because you like it more than any other thing you could be doing those 15 hours, more than playing football, more than cooking, more than watching a movie, more than listening to Drake and Kendrick Lamar, more than anything in the world that you would rather do is work than anything else, the only thing you're guaranteeing yourself is good mental health. I think the world has this wrong. I think the word hard work has been demonized by people that don't want to put in hard work. And I believe that there are unlimited people out there who hustle, who are incredibly happy. And I personally know hundreds, if not thousands of people who are incredibly balanced in their 35 hours of work a week, who are deeply insecure, have major mental health issues. There's no correlation of the two. And I loved how you responded because we've brought them together and we have it completely confused. Talk about something that I talk a lot about that the kids don't like. People, when I say patience, one of the most fascinating things that has happened in my life's journey is realizing people will take words and give them definitions that are not of that word. Mo, do you know that most young people that DM me, that push against me for patience, describe it not as patience? When they hear me talk about patience, they think I'm saying indecisiveness, non-action, or worst of all, most people misinterpret patience for complacency. The last thing I am is complacent. The last thing I am is indifferent or impatient. I think that patience is incredibly important. Insecurity is predicated on needing validation from others. No wonder so many guys are impatient to make $1 million because they want to buy a BMW and a Rolex to impress the opposite sex and their friends. When you are actually secure and self-confident, you can lean on patience to be your friend. When you lean on patience to be your friend, you achieve much greater success. Shortcuts and missteps have direct correlation to mitigating and limiting your upside. The more patience you have to pill it out, the more likely you will succeed. Most people's impatience comes from one source: insecurity. I've got to get famous now. I've got to make $1 million now. Why? They need that asset for everybody else. The singular reason that I am a happy person is the only stress that I think has validity is the stress you get if you're worried about the health and well-being of someone you love. Jess, listen,
this, for people to understand this, the only thing that should get you truly worked up and in a twist is your family sick.
The fear of losing a family member, or they're in danger, terminally ill, a health scare, the death of, the abduction of, the kidnapping, like the amount of, so I have unlimited stress because I have 700 businesses, I have 150 million followers on social, publicly, like I have a ton of things.
Yeah.
I literally just had this conversation with my father. He has a stress at work at the wine store. And I said to him, Dad, this thing is so small. It's probably number 987 for me in my world right now. And you're treating this like World War III. And again, Matt's probably laughing because he knows Sasha well. I have never been able to give a lot of merit. I've slipped up. I'm a human being. I'm not a robot. But it is shocking how much money and vanity is not in the equation of things that I'm going to stress when I didn't have any. People, when I say money, someone just now said, well, easy for you to say, I just Googled you, I know what your net worth is. I didn't make more than $70,000 a year in the first 12 years of my career.
Yeah.
A year. Like, I lived within my means, and I was happy. People are insecure, Jess. Here's why parents stress about kids getting into college.
Oh, yeah.
If their kid gets into Princeton, they get to tell everybody they got into Princeton. And if they go to, NC State, that's not as bougie, right?
I live in Silicon Valley. I can assure you that is exactly the dynamic.
And so parents need to stop weaponizing their children as vanity utensils for their insecurity.
Oh my gosh.
I think if you're a confident person and you're a simple person, and you will be a much happier person. And so for me, I have unlimited stress. 98% of it is good stress.
Great.
I want my company to be better.
I think that this is something people really struggle to learn to differentiate. And I did, right? Like the first 20 years of my career, gunner. I'm going to go to this high growth company, and I got to show my impact and my merit, and in a twist about all that. And now at this point in my life, I'm like, my parents are alive. It's a miracle.
That's awesome.
Like I am so much more.
I've always lived this way. I always say this. My professional goal is to buy the New York Jets. And I always say to myself, if I bought the New York Jets tomorrow, it happened. I pulled it off. And the next day, my parents died in a car crash. Would I be happy? I sure wouldn't.
No.
So why don't I live my life
right
that way? Last night, I flew back from San Francisco after watching my beloved New York Jets lose. I landed. It was my father's birthday, and I drove another hour and a half to wish him a happy birthday, hang with him for a little bit, give him a kiss, and then drove 2 hours back up. Like, I act. And by the way, this is September 10th yesterday. You know this. I'm in corporate America. Like, the real action for next year is happening right now.
Yep.
I'm gonna really use that 5 hours back in the office. But like, I'm not.
You made the right decision.
And I think everyone has. And by the way, I make plenty of decisions of choosing work over micro family moments. If it was my dad just hanging out, not his birthday, I probably so we're all living life. We're all doing the best we can, but nobody's going to care about how much money they made in their last breaths. It's just universally real.
No.
And look, I want to build empires. I want to be successful. I'm doing all this stuff, but simplicity. So what I do for a living is I realize that 95% of money and energy is wasted. It's wasted in tactics, and it's wasted in creating a fake Northstar. Recalling the beginning of my talk, it's wasted in creating a fake Northstar of what success is, or not having the emotional strength to decide what winning is for yourself and letting somebody else define what winning is. Your girl, your parents, somebody you look up to. Please, please, please understand there are very basic things that need to get done to win. One, play your game. Always be on the offense for what matters to you. And two, realize that if you do not have a skill, if you do not have skills, you don't deserve to build a business. You can't just read about it. You can't just listen to podcasts about it. You can't just be about it. You gotta have fucking skills. Have skills, know what you want to happen for yourself, nobody else. There's that, how many people saw Rocky 4? Like the Russian one. Just raise your hands, I wanna know. Remember that part where Drago, before the fight, he's like Yahtzee guy, he's like, I'm doing this for myself, like fuck you, Russia? That shit. Be fucking Drago. Do your shit for you, not what everybody else wants you to do. That, my friends, is how you win in life. I've spent most of my 20s sitting with 80 and 90-year-old people, constantly. I was very fucking weird. I would go in public, I would roll up on 80 fucking year old, people that looked like they might die before the conversation was over. Airplanes, I would switch seats, sit with an old fucker, and I would fucking drill those people. And I would ask them question after question after question. And those old fuckers, strangers, people that fucking died 6 weeks after I met them, those people formed my life because I looked at 50 to 100 people that lived it and their shit was the same. Let me say this to this crowd. How you make your money is way more important than how much you make. How you make your money is way more important than how much you make when you're 80 and your grandkids and your kids are talking about your life. Doing what you wanted to instead of what everybody else wanted you to do is the number one thing. It's the number one thing. And so many of us didn't have the strength at 15, 16, 17 to not do what society or our parents wanted us to do. The cool thing is, it's never too late. It just isn't. Like, I made a video about 60-year-old entrepreneurs that went quite viral for me, and like the emails are flooding in and it's fucking crazy. Like, it's just never too late. So, guys, it's basic, but it's hard and it takes work. And so I wish you nothing but success, and I really hope you understand the practicality that my talk was framed in, because way too many people are wishing who they are instead of realizing who they are. Too many people in this room are hoping for something without understanding that there's so much better to be grounded in what it is and then going all in on that. I'm completely convinced, and I watch it every day, that you can overshoot your ambition by understanding who you are and then just being patient. That in a 15-year window, you are far more successful than if you run to the thing that you're not in a 6-year window. There's way too many stories of this. You know them. Don't be one of those statistics. What AI is doing, forget about even generative AI, creative, like I'm talking just pure AI, intelligent, all of it. What AI is gonna do is exactly what the tractor did. I need everyone to hear this. The day before the tractor was invented, a shocking percentage of human beings on Earth worked on farms. This is where history, like, you can't even, as a matter of fact, watch this. I'm gonna do it while we're talking. I'm gonna make a meta moment. Watch this. What percentage of humans worked on farms prior to the tractor being invented? So I'm literally using ChatGPT while I'm answering your question right now. 80 to 90% of the people engaged in farming and agricultural work. Are you kidding me? So what do I think? I think technology, planes, trains, automobiles, boats, television, the internet, phones, they get invented and they make us do different actions. What you and I do today for work, we're doing work right now.
Yeah, and we used to do it super differently 25 years ago.
That's right. We couldn't.
I got the first laptop for sending documents and emails, and my cell phone was the size of a bread box.
Yeah, your cell phone looked like this. It was this big.
It was my shoe phone, exactly.
So what do I think? I think anyone who's putting their head in the sand and hoping this is a fad or that the government's going to regulate it are incredibly naive. Everybody should stop right now on a dime, download ChatGPT, Perplexity, all of them, and start tasting it.
Start working
because
with
it is going to change the world in a way that you can't comprehend. And some people are going to need to adjust their crafts. If you're a designer and you just design in Adobe, you
copywriter, designer, brand strategist.
It's going to change everything for everyone. Researcher. So, I think it's a big change. And so I think it's going to make some people wildly productive. I'm going to be one of those people. What I just did right there, I do all day long now.
Integrate it into your workflow and your exploration and summaries.
It's my co-creative strategist. I think with my AI.
Totally.
And so it's going to be a big deal. And I want, here's the last thing I'll say on it. Think of it as a tidal wave coming at you. Please use this meeting to grab a surfboard to ride the wave versus what I know a lot of you are doing, which is you're putting your head in the sand and your entire strategy is this.